Lawyers of Reddit, what's the worst way you've seen a person screw over someone else in court, whether it be criminal, civil, or divorce proceedings? Represented a guy that stole 3 trucks from his work. Only 2 were recovered before trial. He showed up to a motion hearing in the 3rd one. I took my ex to court because she had used my social security number to sign up for cable. I found out about it when she stopped paying for the service. She screwed herself over by just being herself. We show up to court. I turn in the contract from the cable company, showing my social security number and her own name signed on the contract. She didn't even try to forge my signature. She signed her own name in and tried to deny that she had any part of it. The judge tore her apart and it was nice. Not someone else, but my client screwed themselves. I'm doing landlord-tenant stuff and my client was facing eviction over non-payment. But the client was withholding rent payments because of habitability issues in the apartment. No heat. High lead levels. Vermin. This is gonna be an easy win for me. Told my client continually to make sure they don't spend the money. Keep it but don't spend it. Because if you show the judge you still have the money, it looks real good for you in terms of making the judge believe that you're withholding for good reasons. We get up in front of the judge. Landlord doesn't have an attorney, so I'm dancing inside. There's no way I can lose. I make my arguments and the landlord makes his. Judge asks my client if they still have the money. My wife is the lawyer. Info. When children reach the age of majority, if they do not continue studying and start working, it is not necessary to pay alimony. Info. My wife's client found a new lover, which unleashed the wrath of the ex-wife, who started asking for more alimony for her children. Well, to win the case, it was necessary to prove that the children were working, but they could not get any proof of it. There was not much chance of winning. But they still went to court hoping that with the interrogations they could find information that would put them in evidence. On the day of the trial, the children did not go. Only the mother and her lawyer were present. Judge. Madam. Tell me why your children could not come. Mom. They could not get permission at work. Judge. Lawyer. Mom. Dot. Another few seconds of silence. Judge. Well, that was fast. I had a client who was trying to get away from an abusive ex and filed for a restraining order. He shows up to the final hearing and is making a big fuss about a truck that they bought during their marriage. He said it was just his, and she had no rights to it because their marriage was void. I asked him on cross-examination what he meant by that, and he said that he had already been married in another state when he married my client. He said that my client had no idea, but that it means their marriage is invalid and the truck was all his. Not only is that legally inaccurate, the transcript of the hearing was promptly turned over to the police, who were actively investigating him for bigamy. Oh. And the judge gave my client the truck along with a 2-year no contact order. Now but. A friend kept meticulous records of how much time his estranged wife spent with their daughter. He used pink highlighter for mom and blue highlighter for himself. Mom sailed into arbitration demanding full custody and handsome child support in the house. Dad pulled out 3 years' worth of year-long calendars. Mom had spent less than a full month with the child in 3 years. Mom was not happy with the outcome. A witness for the plaintiff in a civil suit, who was a co-worker of the plaintiff, testified very strongly against the company and in favor of the plaintiff. I questioned her about bias toward the plaintiff, if they knew each other well, were friends, etc. She said, no, just friendly co-workers. Work friends at best. I pinned her to it, and I got a chance to cross-examine the plaintiff. She had no choice but to burn her witness's credibility, because not only were they very close friends, but they had become sisters-in-law just a few years before. No, they did not have the same last name or anything. But I had done my homework. I still don't get why people want to fight small bias by destroying their credibility. But it happens more than you think. I am being sparse on details here due to confidentiality, but I had a client who was accused of a very nasty assault offense. He had an alibi, he was at work. Where he was the boss. He had an employee who could absolutely vouch for his being there. I talked to the employee. Employee confirmed this. It gets closer to the trial. And around the time when I need to send in an alibi notice. Which is advance notice to the Crown so that they can investigate the alibi and determine whether or not it's true. But I am being careful. So I call the employee up again. Turns out my client fired him in the interim. And so the employee quite candidly tells me, oh, yeah. He was definitely at work. But that's not what I'll say in court. FCK that guy. He is going down. I did not call him as a witness. Or file the alibi notice. Still won the trial. But if I hadn't thought to call the guy. Or if he'd been less candid. My client would have been FK'd hard. Sex offender registry. Jail time. The works. Completely innocent. Not a lawyer, but I sat on the jury of a man who was accused of molesting his 10-year-old niece. He elected to testify in his own defense and his defense was, I did it. But it was her idea. It was his third felony strike, so he will be spending, with luck, the rest of his life in prison. Not caught. But Liv PD traffic stop I was watching and the guy told the officer I have caffeine pills in my back pocket, gets them out, puts them on the hood. Everyone's chill. Dude then comes clean and says it's Molly and the officers look at each other and go, do we even have a test kit for that? Other officer says no, dude's face just shows he should have kept his mouth shut. Sitting waiting for my client and the judge is giving a mass colloquy for an alternative program on a DUI. Basically probation. Question: has anyone consumed alcohol or taken drugs in the last 24 hours? Obvious answer aside. One dude proudly raises his hand, I smoked some dope last night. He did not get probation. Kind of a self-screw, but the MPAA entered DVD John's code for breaking DVD copy protection as part of their lawsuit into their evidence, which then became public record. The code that breaks DVD copy protection was now available to the entire world, defeating the entire purpose of their lawsuit. But there was a case going on in my town between a father and son that was hilarious. The dad is a big time personal injury attorney around here who started his own firm under his name. George Sink, and his son ended up joining the family business. Well, they had a falling out, so the son goes off to start his own firm. He has his dad's name. So the dad is suing the son for using the name he gave him to start his own law firm. Not a lawyer. But my dad is a physician and is sometimes called as a professional witness in cases of malpractice. In one memorable case, a family was suing a doctor for something fairly frivolous. And my dad was a witness for the defense. The lawyer representing the family was cross-examining my dad. And brought up a chapter in a medical textbook and asked my dad to read a highlighted paragraph. He does. And the lawyer says something to the effect of, so, what you just read means, blah blah medical thing. My dad confidently replied, no. It does not mean that. Lawyer. No, but if you read this, the author clearly states, blah blah medical thing. Dad. No. Really? That's not what the author means. Lawyer. How do you know that's not what the author meant? Dad. Well, because I wrote it. Judge basically facepalmed while the lawyer mimicked a goldfish and stared at the author name on the chapter. Basically the best moment of my dad's professional life. Yes. Ruling was in the defendant's favor. I'm a paralegal. The best situations are when we get a sovereign citizen, someone in the USA who thinks that the US laws do not apply to them for a vast variety of reasons, hire us but won't let us do anything on their case. We've had to actually fire a bunch of clients because they have gone against our rules, like, don't send a letter to the judge. Don't write your own motions. Don't announce that you're not Mark Smith because Mark Smith has capital letters and you were born with lowercase letters. Etc. Honestly, a whole thread on these people wouldn't be enough. A wife filed for a restraining order because she wanted the house during divorce. Husband has good job. Like 200k per year. Employer finds out about restraining order. Husband is fired. He was very specialized employee, so only job he can find closer to house. Ex-wife and daughter is 50k. House gets foreclosed. Child support at less than $500 per month. Wife has to get job as waitress. 4 cars get repossessed. Not a lawyer, but I was a jury foreman on a case about 5 years back. Guy was accused of attempting to kill his girlfriend. Various charges up and down the severity were filed. However, victim's testimony wasn't terribly convincing, especially after cross. And there was only evidence that something had happened in the house that night, but not necessarily that the BF had done it. Anyway, defenses turn to present, and they unexpectedly recess for the day. We come back the next day, and the defendant testifies. He puts himself at the scene and admits to hitting her. We ended up convicting him of everything but attempted murder, if I remember right. Afterwards, the judge came into the jury room and told us that the unexpected recess the previous day was because the defendant insisted on testifying against his lawyer and the judge's advice. If he hadn't testified, basically no chance we would have convicted him. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. Not a lawyer, but when my Phil and Mill got divorced, she wanted to file jointly for the previous year because they were still married. They would have gotten a decent refund. He insisted on filing separately, despite the fact that he would owe 4k, because he wanted her to also owe the IRS. He did it to frost her ass. Defendant trying to overturn default judgment claims person process server served wasn't him. Couldn't possibly be him. Etc. At hearing, process server testifies he clearly recognizes defendant there in court 2 years later because defendant physically threatened him at time of service. Made himself pretty memorable. Oh, and process server was sure he served the right guy. BC at time of service. He had photo of defendant, which my client had helpfully sourced on mugshots. Had a criminal jury trial for misdemeanor criminal mischief over 4 years ago. State filed charges and kept amending the information to the point where they left the actual victim out of the trial and proceeded with the 2 eyewitnesses. Well, one of the witnesses was my client's ex and the other witness was the ex's new GF. They claimed my client vandalized the actual victim's car. Client denied everything. Well, apparently, the state and both witnesses had no idea that the ex had an outstanding warrant for not paying child support to my client, which created a motive for him to lie. Asked him if he was aware that he had a warrant out for his arrest on the stand. He didn't know. The judge excused the jurors. The bailiffs arrested the ex on the stand. State rested. Judge granted our motion for judgment of acquittal because we had good case law for the victim not being there. Client walked away free and the ex went to jail. Was involved in a custody case where a wife cheated on her husband and had a child as a result. She let husband believe the child was his until she was about 5 years old and they were divorcing. To stop him from getting custody, she convinced the biological father to try to get custody, thinking that if he won she would wind up with the child. Became a huge 3-way fight. Multiple sets of grandparents involved. Attorney's fees skyrocketed because the case would have been pretty quick otherwise. She couldn't pay her attorney. Tried to get the bio dad too. Got even messier. Etc. Basically there still isn't an agreement all parties will follow. They are in and out of court every year or so. She screwed herself. That poor kid. There's a lawyer in my town who has a reputation for being a real dick. He left a very successful firm to go off on his own. He and the firm negotiated which clients he would take, and how eventual fees from those clients would be divided. All seemed fine and dandy. As soon as he is out the door, he sues his old firm saying the deal is unenforceable and that he should 100% of the fees from the clients who came with him. He lost. And appealed. Lost again and appealed to the state Supreme Court, where they shut his ass down and, in extremely diplomatic language, pretty much called him a dick. Not my case, but still my favorite story. Dude screwed himself over when he went to jury trial for a burglary charge and wore the same distinct sweatshirt he wore the night he committed the crime. Kind of hard to argue the guy in the video isn't your client at that point. Needless to say, he was convicted and spent a few years in dock. I can't remember the specifics of the story, but my mom is a lay magistrate but was working for a domestic violence service at one stage and had a client who was terminally ill, and she advised them to change their will so their possibly separated abusive partner wouldn't be entitled to anything when they passed away. Client passed away. Abusive partner stormed into the law firm dealing with the will, demanding to know where their share of the finances etc were, and was simply told they'd been written out of the will and the case couldn't be discussed with them. Best way to screw someone over rather than the worst. It's not someone else, but it's timeless and I bet every criminal lawyer has seen it. Us. We've gotten you an incredible result. Just stand up and apologize and don't say anything else. Client. Okay. Us. No, seriously, we mean it. Don't monologue. Just say you're sorry. And we've convinced the judge to give you lenient sentence. Client. Okay. Judge. Defendant, do you have anything to say? Client. Extended monologue about how unfairly he's being treated. Judge. Hammer. Us. Here in Missouri, a Golden Corral is being sued for the death of an elderly man. He was choking and manager asked if anyone could help. An employee waved their hand and said they could. The manager stopped them and sent them away. The man died, obviously. The stupid part here is the corporate lawyer's defense to have case tossed is they didn't owe that man any aid and he died from his own fault for not cutting his food up into smaller pieces. The case is tragic, but the lawyer's defense is just outright rude and will cost them if it goes to trial. Basically, all custody battles where neither parent is a legitimately horrible person, parent everyone is better off without. The kids always get screwed. I've seen a parent use non-existent discipline as a tool to win over their teenage child, so that the child will choose to live with said rubbish parent. And rubbish parent will receive child support from the other parent. It boils my blood seeing someone allowing their 15-year-old child to drop out of school, get high every day, buy them drugs, alcohol, just about every negative thing you could do to a kid, just so they don't have to pay $100 in child support a month. Edit. For everyone commenting on the fact that the child support payments were so cheap. Child support amounts in my jurisdiction are relative based upon the paying parenting's situation, income, schooling, assets, etc. They were deadbeats. Part-time, under the table seasonal employment in government welfare. This person screwed themselves and their company. Used to practice employment law and had a guy who was terminated. In part allegedly due to his race. His former boss was on the stand and was under direct questioning from his attorney. His attorney asked if there was a reason that he singled out our client in his treatment, assumingly to get to the fact that our guy had disciplinary issues and had been being put on a performance improvement plan. Instead, he went off and talked about how just have to treat those people differently and you can't talk to them the same way you do others. Our cross-examination was very short. Employee was black and boss was Asian if it matters. People always seem to ask when I tell the story. Not the worst, but one that sticks out that they did to themselves. Woman shows up to court in a "It's party time bitches. Drink up" t-shirt. She was there for her first appearance on a third DUI charge. Judge was not in a humorous mood that day. Well, the guy screwed himself technically. Also not a lawyer, but I was a witness on the case. My brother was beaten by a group of guys outside a bar. Because one of them lived in a place my mom rented out and tried to evict him for numerous reasons. And it doesn't stick cause in BC the rules always side with the tenant. One day after this beating they were lipping off to my mom and my brother call him out on it. So him and another guy came charging. Bro had a baseball bat nearby and smacked his buddy with it. Got charged with assault with a weapon. In court the guy who got hit came in drunk and called the judge a cocksucker or asshole or something. Judge told my brother I have to give you something cause you used a weapon so you get probation. Lady brought a frivolous case to get out of a contract she signed. She lost. Then sued the attorney and the witnesses for conspiring against her. They got her case dismissed and an award of attorney's fees which she refused to pay. Lawyer recorded it as a lien on her house and scheduled a foreclosure sale, which caused her mortgage lender to declare a default and accelerate entire mortgage balance. Lawyer made a side deal with lender to pay them all proceeds of the sale and then sold her house on courthouse steps to highest bidder and then arranged for sheriff to forcibly eject her onto the street with hush tea. She's homeless now. Short story. Honor your contracts and don't sue your lawyer when you don't. Used to work in children's court representing parents. When I first started, I witnessed another attorney destroy any chance of their client getting their kids back. At a review hearing assessing whether the court should terminate parental rights, the attorney was so confused about what was happening that they requested unmonitored visits for their client, but didn't even address termination of rights. Needless to say, the court terminated the client's parental rights. The worst part was that earlier that day, the court took up a petition for more time, but denied it after the attorney failed to make any argument. Based on the facts, parent was doing really well. They probably would have won. The second worst part was overhearing the attorney tell her client to come back for the next review hearing, finalizing the adoption. Not only would there be nothing the parent could do at that hearing, but terminated parents aren't even allowed to be there. Edit. A spelling. Why is that attorney even in this profession?